Welcome to the American Soybean Association stage. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner. With us is Fred Sipes from Kentucky and Brandon Wipf from South Dakota. Correct? I have the right Dakota?
Absolutely, South Dakota.
Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. We really get into a pretty, I think it's a fun topic, primarily because I'm a little bit of a policy nerd and I really love farm bill discussions in general. So let's start first, because we're going to get into some different bits and pieces talking about conservation and those types of things. But let's start first as we head into these early 2023 farm bill discussions. What are some things that you're watching and thinking about and want to make sure that American soybean farmers are heard?
Yeah, you can hardly believe we're already talking about the next farm bill because it feels like we just got done, writing one. But it's the most important policy discussion that we have in agriculture. It touches just about every acre in America. It's the largest investment made worldwide in land-based conservation, and it's our best chance to really set conservation policy for the whole country. Conservation is very important to soybean farmers, and we want to make sure that their voice is heard in all of this. Fred, what do you think?
That's exactly right, Brandon. The farmers, not just soy farmers, but farmers in general, but the farm bill is very important. And like I said, we're laying down groundwork now, discussing points and everything that's important to the farmers for the farm bill.
Yeah.
So I think as we look ahead to the farm bill, I don't think we're going to escape conservation and climate conversations as that discussion heats up and ramps up. How important is it for you as farmers to make sure that you're helping set the policy and not have policies passed or approved that don't work for you?
Well, fortunately, the Ag Committee is generally made up of senators and representatives in each house that come from farm states. They often are very strong with their farm constituents, and so we're able to really communicate the things that are working, the things that aren't. We really think there should be room for a more robust energy title discussion in the Farm Bill than what we've had recently. Farmers should reclaim their leadership role in terms of renewable fuels, renewable energy. I think this administration and the last one both, I think, could have done a better job of using farmers to attack the problems that we're having right now. Huge high prices at the gas pumps. It's really hurting everyday Americans. I think farmers can be a part of that.
That's right. And, we just had Hill visits last week in D.C., and I know Kentucky was represented, and we got to meet with all of our congressmen or their staff and ag staff, and they're aware of the Farm Bill, knowing what we need in it, knowing our issues in Kentucky and different places, of course, too, but they're very knowledgeable in what's going on, and hopefully we can keep passing things to get where we need to be on the Farm Bill.
How do you look at we talk about conservation? I think carbon markets kind of like come into this play in that conversation. Does that provide opportunity? How is that conversation shaping among farmers as you look at those, knowing that you're already utilizing some of these conservation practices that are so important to you and what we're talking about as the administration works to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint?
Well, ASA is really, we're a believer that carbon markets are going to be able to provide another revenue stream for farmers. We want to make sure that the bulk of the benefits really accrue to the growers that are making these changes on their farm. And secondly, even if the changes have already been made, I think as you alluded to, the individuals that were already doing the climate smart things years before it really became part of the discussion, they need to not be penalized essentially for being early adopters of those technologies.
And that's what I was going to add. I think farmers in general, we are ahead of the chain sometimes and are adapting before things get put in paper or on policy. Farmers pick up pretty easy and do what they need to do to conservation-minded sustainability and always putting, leave it better than you found it kind of attitude. And I think that's been in place for a long time anyway. But don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things to improve on and to set policy on.
I want to talk a little regulatory,
Okay.
and I don't think we can have a conversation about conservation without talking a little bit about waters of the U.S. And we know that this is getting looked at again. What do you want to make sure the EPA administrator hears from you and farmers to hear from farmers about a revamped or a reworked waters of the U.S.?
I think waters of the U.S. is very important. It needs to be structured to where farmers aren't just having to get permission to do every single thing out on their farm. Like I said earlier, farmers are good stewards of the land. We protect our water resources, our soil resources. Farmers are doing a lot now in the right conservation minded, and I hope the leaders see that, and I do hope the EPA sees that as well, to where they can come to a common ground to have the WOTUS in place for us.
Yeah, it's important to really communicate to the EPA the farmers need more certainty. So WOTUS was an Obama era policy that then Trump got rid of that, and he had a navigable waters protection rule that we thought worked really well from the farmer's perspective. And now Biden's got rid of that, and we're trying to do another WOTUS. There's a case before the Supreme Court that we're really asking EPA to just stop with the new rulemaking until we at least hear what the Supreme Court has to say on this. And at the end of the day, we can't have a changing definition and really just a changing landscape every 4 or 8 years in politics. We need a durable definition of waters of the U.S., which is what EPA has said they intend to give, but so far we think there's some improvements to the process that they should be making.
How much is that uncertainty to know that so you had a rule for 6 to 8 years, right? And then you had a new rule for a couple of years, and now you're looking at another new rule again. How important and how disruptive is it to not have a policy that's fluid, to go from administration to administration, that leaves you maybe guessing where you are?
We as farmers are always adapting to change, and I think we're good at it. But just what you mentioned, every 4 years or whatever, we need policy set in place, good policy that farmers can depend on, rely on. Because on our operations, I'd say every soybean farmer here, we're not just thinking about this year, we're thinking about years ahead. Improvements, whether it's tiling or whatever, and that's not a 1 year commitment. Those are long-term commitments, and we need good policy in place for the farmer for that.
Kind of like what Fred said, farmers do not measure success in acres or even a single farming year. We measure success we're thinking in decades, we're thinking in generations. And, when we talk about this regulatory uncertainty or any sort of uncertainty we're facing, it really kind of threatens what goes to the core of what makes American agriculture great. And that's the fact that we're always looking well toward the future. And we just want to know that we're going to have a way of life for the next generation and the generation after that. And that's really all we're after. And so if the government would be a partner with us on that, I think we would really appreciate that.
Let's talk climate. With the Growing Climate Solutions Act, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts about the act and some of the things that agriculture is having conversations that agriculture is having in relations to that.
So the Growing Climate Solutions Act passed the Senate with 92 votes out of 100. In this political climate, that's basically unheard of. So we know there's broad bipartisan support for the things that are in there. We're still calling on the House to pass that. We feel it really checks a lot of boxes for really anyone who has an interest in climate smart agriculture, and we're really calling on them to get that done.
I know ASA supports that, and we do need it done, like Brandon's talking about.
When you look at the future of climate smart practices, innovation, can you do any of that moving ahead without precision agriculture?
I can't. I've grown up only really knowing an agriculture where I can look at satellite maps, and my grandfather knew that field over there is better than this field generally, and my dad maybe knew that side of the field performs better than this, but now I can prove, I have the data to back me up on it. I can say right down to the square inch where those lines are. Years ago we put these arbitrary roads in just this grid form. Well, nature doesn't care about our arbitrary lines, and so it's really giving us an opportunity to be better managers of the assets that we have.
Yeah, and that boils down to precision ag with our equipment we're using as well. We're producing so much more with less. We're using less water. I think by 2025, the American farmer is going to be 25% less on soil erosion. But the technologies, the precision ag, whether it's your planter, your sprayers, it's just it benefits everybody. It's been great, and every technology is changing rapidly, but grow and adapt with it, and it benefits us all.
What has been the biggest change in the time that you've been? Brandon said he's never farmed without having maps and being able to map things out. So for you, what has been the biggest change technologically over your years farming?
This is a pretty generic, basic description, but I was in the interview process at the National Farm Machinery Show a few weeks ago, and with a local guy there. And I'm 46 years old. I'm not super old, but I can remember one of the first times we planted corn. My dad and my grandfather, we had a 6-row corn planter and had a bar across the front of it with chains hanging on it that we'd turn around, and that was our guidance system on the tractor. Of course, now we're using GPSs and auto steers and all that. So that's kind of generic, but I mean that's a big change from 30 years ago. So
it's fascinating to watch how things continue to change and evolve and innovate, and where that leads us into smarter agriculture, more climate-friendly production practices as well.
Our drying systems now, we have our phone out. We can be out in the field in the combine, and we're controlling the dryer systems from our iPhone and all that. Of course, that technology's been out for a while, but it's still something I need to adapt to and use and all that. And it's great technology. You just got to learn it and use it.
It's really kind of a call to not just the farmers, but all the companies that are behind us here at Commodity Classic that produce the products that we need. 10,000 years ago, all of the materials that go into making all of the technology that we have, they existed on this planet. The only thing that has changed is that we now understand what we have, and as our understanding continues to improve, I think we need to always be looking for the next leg of growth and the next things that we can change, and not just sit back and rest on what we've done so far. So I really look forward to the future all the time and how much better it still is going to be.
And to what Brandon just said, we commented earlier about the next generation, especially on this technology. I mean, it's not for just this year, and a lot of those things, I mean, they change and adapt every year, but you're looking 10 years, 20 years out for the next generation on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Before I let you go this afternoon, I don't think I can let you go without asking you, as you look ahead to the 2022 planting season, what are some things that you're maybe thinking about? We know concerns about inputs and volatility in markets, those types of things. How are things shaping up as you get a little bit closer to planting? Because I'm assuming you're going to start a little bit before Brandon.
Typically in Kentucky, we'll start mid-April, so we're about a month away. We have our inputs in place as long as we can get them, and our suppliers are telling us that they're there. We hope so. But you're right, the volatility in the market and the fertilizer market, the chemistry market has just changed so much in the last 12 months. But hopefully we can get everything in place we need to do our job this spring.
Any shift in acres?
We're about 50-50 corn, soybeans, and we do some winter wheat, which will come back in. In our area, we get to double crop. We'll put a beans in behind our wheat ground. Right now, I'm staying on my rotation. The markets are very volatile, but have been pretty good here lately, and right now I don't see any reason for changing.
Brandon?
In my part of South Dakota, we're really exceptionally dry. Really, for the last year and a half, we've been very short of moisture. Yes, the inputs are a concern. We're going to have to pay more no matter what we're buying, but none of that matters if I can't get some rain to get this crop going. And so that's probably my biggest concern moving forward. As far as shifting acres based on market moves, we don't really do that on our farm either. We try to stick with a rotation that's proven to work over many years. And like I said, rain is kind of the biggest thing I'm worried about right now.
Do you have livestock also?
I don't.
You don't?
I'm cow-calf producer, yes.
I was just curious with the drought if you've seen
I know
movement of cattle?
Well, it's been very challenging there. I know hay prices really spiked sooner than commodity prices did in our area because we've been so dry, and the cattle producer is my partner in agriculture, whether I have cattle or not. The things I grow go into those industries, and so you certainly feel for the concerns that they're having as well. I don't know of too many herds that are being liquidated in my area. It's not necessarily that dire yet, but if we stay dry going into this summer, I think it's going to get pretty ugly.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Fred Sipes from Kentucky and Brandon Wipf from South Dakota. I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.